This week on Investigating Pathways, I'm joined by Zach Latta. Zach is a founder and CEO of HackClub, a global network of high school hackers, coders, and builders. On today's episode, we talk through Zach's journey, starting from dropping out of high school and working at the once popular company Yo as just a teenager, and then finally building a like-minded community of high school hackers at HackClub. So, for some quick background about those who don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do?
Yep. So my name is Zach Latta, and I'm the founder of HackClub. I'm 23 right now, but I started HackClub when I was 16. I grew up on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Both my parents are social workers. My mom works in foster care, my dad in homelessness. And growing up, I went to public schools that, like most schools in America still today, don't teach computer science classes and don't teach any coding. But I was just always one of those kids that could never pull myself away from computers. In the third grade, all of my friends and I played Club Penguin. One day during lunch, we were talking, we said we had to make a website about Club Penguin. I volunteered myself as webmaster. I didn't know how websites worked. I'd never written code before. And that night I went home, I went on Google, I typed in how do you build a website, and I just got totally hooked. Over the course of my childhood and my early teen years, I helped make a few different apps and games. And ultimately, when I made it to high school, I was just really incredibly lonely. I didn't know anybody else that shared my interest. I was really desperate for a community. I was trying to find lots of communities online. And ultimately, I ended up dropping out of high school after my freshman year. And it wasn't because I was too smart for school or anything like that. It was really because I was just so desperate for a community, and I was so incredibly sad. And I was really having a hard time making it one day to the next. When I was 16, I moved out of my parents' home. I became financially independent. I moved to San Francisco and became a programmer. And I was the first employee at a company where we made an app that became the #1 app on the App Store. And then I was the first engineer, not the first employee. And I took all my savings up until that point to start HackClub, to build what I so desperately wish I had when I was a student. And HackClub is a nonprofit network of high school hackers. There's hack clubs in 500 high schools around the world. These are all student-led groups that meet weekly, and they're kind of like mini hackathons that happen every week after school. There's an online HackClub Slack where there's 3 million messages sent every year. We think it's one of the most active online chat communities of teen developers on the internet. We run HackClub Bank, where we allow hack clubs to use our legal entity to process donations and to spend money. We issue physical debit cards. Students have done $2 million on HackClub Bank in the past 2 years. And then finally, we run events. So during non-COVID times, there's 122 student-led high school hackathons that happen in the HackClub network each year. But then during COVID, we've started running our own events, and we've done online AMAs. So, for example, our last guest was Gwen Shotwell, the COO of SpaceX, and she came on 48 hours before she put 4 astronauts into space for an hour-long discussion. It was just kind of completely amazing and humbling having a chance to talk with her.
Awesome. So going back to, you mentioned that you got into computers and code with the website. Were you into like building code, or had you thought about code at all before this first Club Penguin website that you ended up making?
Well, I was 7, so I didn't really know what coding was or that this was a thing. And I certainly didn't have any friends who were coders or friends whose parents who were coders. I didn't even realize that, computers were a thing that you could modify. Like, I always knew there was something magic about computers and about technology, and I was always taking things apart as a kid and sometimes successfully putting them back together. But really, that was the first time where I kind of had this, it almost felt like a light bulb went off in my head. I don't think I really recognized it at the time, but in retrospect, I think there was a real mindset shift where I started seeing myself, I think, as less of a consumer of technology and more of a creator. Like this idea that the world around us is malleable. And if you think really deeply and you've asked why until you can't ask why anymore, you can begin to understand the world around you. And if you understand it, you can change it. And you realize that the world around us is built by humans no smarter than you or I. It's a very humbling idea to realize and think about that. And I think that was definitely the first time I got like a little taste of that. And I will say, I definitely wasn't overly deliberate about my start. Like, I didn't know that you could get paid as a programmer. I just wanted to make a cool website for my friends.
Got it. So if you don't mind my asking, actually, what was that website for Club Penguin? Was it like an account tracker? What was it?
It was a blog. It was a terrible, terrible blog where we would write tutorials. on how to do different things in Club Penguin. So I don't know if you've ever played, but for example, one of the posts that we wrote was there's a minecart game where you can earn coins in the minecart game. And if there's like a specific type or play style that you can do that will maximize the coins earned per minute of gameplay put in. So, there were just silly blog posts that really weren't very useful like that.
Are they still up?
Probably if you looked hard on the internet, you could find some, but I'd be surprised.
Awesome. So, following up on the question of like your first piece of code, what has over the years till date, what has been your favorite piece of code that you've shipped? Something that you've been the most proud of? It doesn't even have to be you. It could be one of the hackers you've worked with. But what has it been that you've been the most proud of, most excited about?
I think that's an interesting question. I mean, definitely as a whole, HackClub, like HackClub from the outside it looks a lot like a pretty traditional nonprofit. And both my parents worked for nonprofits growing up too. So I saw over the dinner table, I'd hear secondhand stories. But I think where HackClub gets really different is on the inside, which is I think that from an implementation perspective, we have a small team, but I think we think about building an organization a lot more like a startup than like a traditional organization. We ask questions like, what can we automate? We have this whole system for sending mail. We just sent 6,000 envelopes to 128 different countries to people who requested HackClub stickers from us. And we put together this whole shipping operation that was highly automated to do that. And in total, 4 people did that over the course of like a month and a half, which is insane. Every single note that went out had a custom handwritten note on it. We care a lot about making things personal. So I'd say as a whole, I'm most proud of the technical work that's gone into HackClub. But more personally, I don't know about favorite, but one of the things that I worked on that I'm really proud of is if you open up a terminal, or actually, Arnav, are you on a Mac or a Linux computer right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and open up a terminal. And here, I'll do the same on my end. I'm on Linux right now. And then type SSH.
Yep.
And then SSHTRON, SSH-tron. So SSH space SSHtron.zachlatta.com.
Okay.
And then go ahead and connect.
SSHtron.zachlatta.com.
Yeah, so SSH space SSHtron.zachlatta.com.
Okay.
And it's WASD to move, and I'm the character who's totally beating you right now. And I'm playing in real time with you.
Oh no, I'm getting shredded.
Yeah, were you able to reconnect? Or try reconnecting. You have to use WASD to move.
Oh wait, there we go.
So
this is sick.
Tron. So if you cut me off, then I'll die.
Oh, not gonna lie, I was just gonna say this is like that really old video game Tron, and then I realized for you it's probably not that old.
Oh no, Tron is definitely an old game for me.
Okay.
I never played Tron growing up, but I was familiar with the concept.
Gotcha. I was gonna say this is something that I've never seen.
So you can have up to 4 players per game. When we launched this, it made it to I think it was #1. I'm not sure if it was actually #1, but I believe it was #1 on Hacker News.
Oh wow.
There were hundreds of people playing concurrently in total. On the first day it was put on the internet, there were 13,000 people who played it from like 50
in one day.
Countries. Yeah, in one day. And it's real time. So like you and I are playing together. You can have up to 4, and then there can be a ton of games going all at once. I'm really proud of this project. We built this. I did the game part. Like I wrote all the code that you're experiencing, and a friend of mine built the website for it. We built this at a hackathon. I was 18, I was actually supposed to be a judge there, but I ended up building a project, and this was built in about 20 hours, and the code is totally disgusting. But I love this idea and this question of like, how do you make computers do things that are unconventional or that you might not expect? Like, I think that the world around us needs a lot more magic in it. I really love like magical realism movies. I really love, art that's able to make you feel like, I don't love the word transcendentalism, but like, I love art that makes you feel kind of a sense of like romanticism around things you might not expect that. Like, I really love Studio Ghibli films. I think they do a really good job at that. And I love asking this question of like, how do you hide a little bit of magic in places you might not expect, like the terminal? So I'm really proud of this project because I feel like it's not perfect, but I feel like there's elements of this that are like really strongly like just creating a little bit of magic. So this is one project I'm really proud of.
Awesome. So, going back to when you said that like you knew that tech was what you wanted to work on, right? What was that aha moment that convinced you like tech, coding, hacking, these are the things that I want to like build the rest of my life around?
Yeah, let me think back. Um, I mean, I definitely don't think it was ever like, oh, like this is what I want to do. I think it was more a feeling of, oh my God, I cannot imagine having to do anything but this. I remember realizing that you could get paid to be a programmer. I didn't really fully know that that was a thing. That was like the most amazing thought in the world. It's like, oh my God, I can get paid to like make cool stuff all day. I thought that's like a thing in like fantasy land. Um, so I definitely don't think I was a very, you know, as a kid, I was very ambitious, but I definitely really, I think, strongly kind of rejected the idea of like the rat race. Like I really wasn't like a careerist teenager. And also like I know what high schools in the Bay Area are like, and I know how incredibly competitive they are. My high school wasn't like that. Um, and so like there definitely was not that culture at all at the school I went to or in the community I grew up in. Um, Maybe little bits of it with the college application process. So I don't think I ever had like, oh, like this is what my career is going to be. It was more like, oh my God, I like all I want to do with my entire life is just like computers are like the closest thing we have today to like magic. Like this is like magic. And like this is like the most compelling, meaningful thing ever. And like I don't care what my role is. I just want to like be a part of this in some way, shape, or form. And I can't imagine doing anything else. And I think a lot of that was I really just wanted friends too. Like when I moved to San Francisco, moved to moved to my parents' home. I mean, I was 16. The youngest, I lived in a house with 12 roommates, which is a lot of roommates, even for San Francisco. And I was 16. The second youngest person was 19 I think, or maybe they were 20. And everybody else was age from there to 27. And like in retrospect, that's not like that big of an age gap. But at the time, it felt enormous. But at the same time, it felt like this is the first time in my entire life I've like felt in like an intellectual sense of the word at home. And I think that is a feeling that I was really chasing. Like I really just wanted to find my tribe, and computers felt like the best way to do that.
Got it. Um, so I've actually never heard of someone like straight up testing out of high school, right? So a few questions around that. So first, what was the process just like, right? How did you get that done? And second, if you don't mind my asking, how did your family and the people around you react to your decision?
Yeah. So there's a test in California that I took. I think they've renamed it, but it still exists in California. It was called the CHESP. It's basically the same. I think every junior in California takes this test. Um, it's a test that it's kind of like the GED. It just is like a list of things that you're supposed to know to graduate high school. So I just took that, and when you take that and you pass it, I took it as soon as you have to be at a certain age, but as soon as I hit that age, I took it. And uh, when you take it, and if you pass, and it's not a crazy, it's not like a hard test. Like SAT is much harder than this test. You technically graduate from the high school of the state of California, or at least that's the way that I understand it. So it's not quite a GED, but it's also because you actually get a diploma, but just not from your high school, but from like the state. I don't fully understand how it works, and I never got like a physical diploma, but I took that, and then I guess I was just like technically done. And leading up to that, I mean, I had tried starting in eighth grade. I tried like a ton of different stuff to just like try different ways of learning. Like I started taking community college classes, not because I wanted to like get into some fancy college, but just because I was like so desperate for like any computing stuff at all. And the only option I had to take a computer class was an introduction to Java taught at the local community college and met every week at like 8 p.m. or something like that. So I tried taking community college classes, and I tried like doing the homeschooling thing for a little bit, and ultimately it just became clear that like testing out was the best way and clearest way to do it. Um, I think my parents were really concerned. Um, and I feel bad about the amount of stress that I put on them. Um, I think that the question that they were definitely asking was like, what did we do wrong, as parents? Because I don't, like what did we do wrong? Because I was kind of doing this different thing. It wasn't clear if it was going to work out at all or not, like at all in the slightest. There's like, of course, a ton of stories online of people trying a similar thing and it not working out. So I think my parents were really scared and kind of asking this question of what did we do wrong? And especially after I started making money and winning hackathons and stuff, I think like having that external validation was very important because it helped not just my parents, but the people around me, not in like a negative way, but I actually think in quite a positive way, recognize like the potential validity of different paths. And now I have a very good relationship with my parents. I'm really happy for that. I think I have the best parents in the world.
Got it. So you mentioned that before you moved to San Francisco and the Silicon Valley in general, you first became financially independent, right? So can you tell me a little bit about that? Like as a 16-year-old who's just like quote unquote graduated high school, right? How did you become financially independent?
Yeah, well, so after I passed the test, almost immediately I moved to San Francisco after that. And when I moved, it was very important to me that I was financially independent, that I wasn't getting like money from my parents or something like that. And, I'm fortunate enough I'm not from a lot of means, but from enough where like my parents could chip in a little bit to support rent. If I really asked them to, which is a position that I recognize that like a lot of people are not in, and I'm very grateful for that. But from an integrity perspective, it was very important for me that if I was going to do this like thing that was different on my own, like I had to own that entirely. Like I didn't want to like be playing a game that's like fake, if you know what I mean. Because it felt like I just spent the past 12 years of my life in like fake games. So my security deposit ate up almost my entire savings. And I arrived in San Francisco. My rent was $1,500 a month, which for like a little tiny bedroom in a 12-person house, because San Francisco rent is insane. I had no idea how I was going to make my second month rent. I assumed like I'll just do like web development contracting work, maybe. I don't know what I'm going to do to make money. And within 24 hours of arriving, I got a job that I believe at the time was actually making more money than both my folks combined. I was working as a software consultant. And that really, that obviously made it so I could afford to live.
Got it. So now talking about the first job you got at Silicon Valley, it was a company, right, that you ended up working at? Yeah. So let's talk about
to Orr, the founder, for giving me that opportunity. I feel like I actually didn't do that great of a job, but I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you managed to get hired, right? Like you're a 16-year-old in the big city of San Francisco, looking for what I'm assuming was the hottest job at the time, right? Tech development. How did you manage to land yourself the job?
I was involved in Facebook communities, and I was helping run a Facebook group called High School Hackers, HS Hackers. It's still around, although it's like a shell of its former self now. And I think Orr, the founder of Yo, saw that group, was looking to hire someone to help with the programming side. And I can't remember if I reached out to him or he reached out to me, but I do remember that I arrived in San Francisco on a Saturday, and I believe we had coffee that Sunday morning, and then I had a job. And I'm just so grateful to him for that opportunity.
Gotcha. So were there any reactions that seemed strange to you at the time from the other folks at Yo, other people that you told like, hey, I just got a job, and they look at you and you're like super young, right? Were there any reactions that you got that were like particularly that you weren't fond of or something like that?
Well, the team was small. I mean, when I joined, there was one salesperson, and then there was me, and that was it. And then there was the founder. And like, that was it. So I mean, I remember participating in like the interview process for the next hire, she was, I think 23 or 24 at the time. Her name was Jessica. And then there was another person who we hired who was actually one of my former roommates who I recommended, and he came in for a little bit. So I was involved lightly, but I don't know. I didn't really have any particularly profound thoughts. Like I just wanted to write code, and I was excited to work with anybody else who wanted to write code too.
Gotcha. So what did you end up working on at Yo?
The back end. So I
Gotcha.
I rewrote the back end in Go was my first project.
So what made you, or like why did you decide to move away from working on Yo and full-time commit to starting your own company / organization at HackClub? Like was being an entrepreneur the end goal, or did you just sort of happen upon it?
Yeah, I mean, my goal was never to be an entrepreneur. Like I never sat out and said like I want to start a business as my thing. I think I've always had entrepreneurial instincts. So while I was learning to code when I was in third grade, I also, when I was in third grade, started a lemonade stand outside of the local middle school that got so popular the cops shut us down because we didn't have a health license. There's actually, I think somewhere there's a Reason magazine article about that lemonade stand. So I've always like done stuff like that and been like kind of had instincts in that direction. But what I will say is like I knew I wanted to make HackClub. Like ever since I was a freshman in high school, like before I moved out, before I like started working as a programmer, like in San Francisco, I knew I wanted to start HackClub. I tried to start a programming club at my high school. It was bad. And my thinking was like, look, programming is like the greatest thing ever. There have to be other people like me who also want to start programming clubs. And like the only reason this is bad is because I don't know how to run good meetings. I don't know how to get people in the room. And we're not part of like some broader thing where there's like events or like you're getting support or like this is a legitimized activity. Like there's no support. And there's other clubs that exist, like there's like Key Club, there's Interact, there's like all these other almost like franchise organizations that exist that were all started like 100 years ago. So I knew this could happen for coding, and I knew I wanted this to exist. So I actually registered the domain name for HackClub like before. We had a different name before, it was called HackClub, before like I moved out. Like I knew I wanted this to be like my thing. So when I was working at Yo, I knew that at some point I wanted to start HackClub, and the question was just when. And just when I left, it was a few months later, I came on as like a contractor instead of as a full-time employee deliberately. Like that was a choice that I made. I just kind of, like I didn't feel like I was doing an amazing job. And I really wanted to, do a thing that was going to really make me come alive. And I felt like HackClub was that. So it just felt like the right thing at the right time. I think I started working on it in September 2014.
Gotcha. So if you don't mind my asking, what was the original name that you had thought up besides
It was
HackClub?
called Hack EDU. Terrible name.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I'm assuming like most ideas, the entrepreneur behind, you start with one idea and it sort of pivots, changes, like you change it in some degree to make it what it is right now. So was the idea always behind HackClub what it is right now, like creating a community of coders who are building their own hack clubs, or was it something different?
Yeah, always the same idea. The implementations changed a lot, and I think a lot of that is just when I started HackClub, I was completely incompetent, and trying to become a lot better over time. But like I'd say HackClub today pretty closely resembles the initial idea, but the ways in which we've gone around executing on that and accomplishing that are very different than I would have expected. Like I wouldn't have expected the online community to be a thing. I knew I would have, like, I think if you asked me at the time, I would have said like, we're going to use Discourse and like an open source forum software. And like now we're on Slack and it's very different as a result. So I wouldn't have expected that. I would have never expected that we would start HackClub Bank. I think that was a real surprise that came up very organically internally. I would have never expected that like, we would run the kinds of events that we are now occasionally running. What I will say is like, as we've built HackClub, I've kind of thought about it in terms of like, almost like a stepwise function where like you're at like stage 1 and then we hit like a cliff and then we need to figure out how to get to like stage 2 and we hit a cliff. And I feel like V1 of HackClub was like me stumbling around with the small team that we had at the time, just like how do you like teach people to code? Like how do you, like we don't even know how to run a good HackClub. And there's a lot of experimentation that I think built like the foundational ideas that we have today. I think phase two of HackClub was, we launched our program publicly in January 2016. That's when we said like, hey, if you want to start a HackClub, like there's a process you can go through and we will support you in doing that. Like phase two was like, let's just get clubs started and figure it out, and I think that I'm really happy that we got stuff moving. I think phase three of HackClub is kind of what we're entering into now, where the question is like, okay, you have multiple hundred hack clubs. Some of them are amazing. Some of them could be a whole lot better. You have this community that's starting to get large enough where like not everybody knows each other, but there's certain like very tightly knit pockets. HackClub doesn't like, it's starting to have alumni. Like there's actually multiple YC companies that have come out of HackClub at this point. So much so that YC actually reached out to us about a year ago. So like we're starting to see the beginnings of alumni, but like we're not doing anything official there. And I think the next big challenge that HackClub faces is like, how do we scale HackClub beyond just like one person? Like HackClub cannot be a messianic organization. It just won't work that way. I think it's important to have a strong founder and a strong vision. But previously, like for almost every really big success case in HackClub, I've spent a ton of time with that person one-on-one. Like, how do we scale beyond that? How do we get HackClub to flourish in areas that like, our team here in the US can't go to? How do we scale HackClub as a team where like the team is not dependent on any one person beyond maybe the top leadership? And how do we scale the community where the community isn't just a series of personality cults, but is something that is much more integrated and interwoven? I think these are like some very interesting, very difficult design questions ahead of us.
Gotcha. So with the idea that you had for HackClub, which obviously like was proven to be a hit, right? Obviously, like hindsight 2020, it was going to be a hit, right? You could have probably found some way to make it a for-profit company and done really well with that, right? So what I'm curious most about is what was the decision behind keeping HackClub a nonprofit?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think the decision was really simple, which is who are we building for? Okay. And what HackClub is building for is we're building for high school students. And one thing that makes HackClub very different than almost any other education organization, whether it's a school, whether it's a nonprofit, or whether it's a for-profit education, is that our user, the person we're building for, is actually the student. Like we actually build for teenagers. A lot of people say they're building for the student, but really they're building for teachers, or they're building for parents, or they're building for like someone else somewhere in the system. We are actually building for students. And as part of that, something that I ask myself every single day in HackClub is like, are we making something that I wish I had when I was a teenager? And for me, when I was a teenager, I had a lot of strong opinions about the world. I had a lot of strong opinions about how the world should work. I felt like there were like corporations were bad. Not always, but oftentimes I felt that corporations were bad. Particularly because I think in a lot of educational contexts, corporations actually do are bad. Like I think Pearson, I don't know. So I had a lot of strong opinions. And I started HackClub probably as like, I probably have identified as like a democratic socialist. Now I'm like a firm capitalist. Like I think capitalism works. I think capitalism is beautiful. I think there are market failures, and like that's why we need a great government. That's why we need democracy, and we do need strong institutions. But I do think capitalism is like the greatest tool we have in the world for social change. But I didn't feel that as a teenager, and I knew that if I was a teenager and I learned about HackClub and I learned that it was a for-profit, I just wouldn't trust it. And trust is number one. So we're a nonprofit because students will trust us more if we're a nonprofit. And I think that's played out to be true.
Gotcha. So when did you realize, like, was there a moment when you realized like HackClub is going to work, right? I don't need to like find some alternative to sustain myself. HackClub is like, it's going.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't even know if we have that today, to be clear. Like, I think every day is a struggle, especially when you're a nonprofit. It is so hard to fundraise. And in particular, it's not just hard to fundraise, it is, or like get philanthropy. It is so hard to get philanthropy that while also actually building a good program. So many people start getting philanthropy and then start building a program for the philanthropists rather than for the people they're actually trying to serve. So I think that's a thing that we're still facing today. What I will say is from the very beginning, I definitely had very strong conviction around HackClub. Like I knew that if HackClub didn't work, it would be my fault. Like I knew that the idea was good because I knew that this is what I wanted when I was a teenager. And I knew that there were other people out there that wanted HackClub because I was part of a Facebook group that had like 3,000 of them. Like I knew that this was a thing that if successfully executed would work. And I don't think I could have totally articulated all of it to you at the time, but just something in like my bones was like this makes sense. And I think a lot of that was like I wasn't trying to build an organization or a company for like someone I didn't know. I was building it for me, and I would just know if it was good or not.
Got it. So now I want to briefly talk about your time as a Teal Fellow, right? And so what I wanted to first talk about is, could you describe a little bit about why you decided to apply to the Teal Fellowship, or who encouraged you to?
Yeah, so the house I moved into at the time when I moved to San Francisco was a Teal Fellowship house. So I wasn't a Teal Fellow there, but when I moved to San Francisco, there were a lot of other people from like the spacer group I was a part of that all knew each other who were moving to San Francisco at the same time, and there were a few of them who were Teal Fellows, and they were recommending that I apply.
Gotcha. So how did the Teal Fellowship help you like grow Hack Club, right? And as an individual?
Yeah, I'm so grateful to the Teal Fellowship. So I got it about a year after I started HackClub and about a year after I moved out. Usually for people who get the Teal Fellowship, they're in college, they get it, then they drop out of college, and then they go off and work on something. For me, I had already taken those steps. I was already out of school. I was already living on my own. I was already financially independent. And I got the Teal Fellowship. I guess it probably was actually like 7 months after I started HackClub. I was just living off of personal savings up until then. And the Teal Fellowship is a pretty loose program. Like, I don't know what kinds of programs you've been a part of before, like summer camps or anything like that. Like normally there's like a schedule that you're supposed to follow and there's like these things that you do. The Teal Fellowship is not like that at all. The Teal Fellowship is like, here's a check, you go off, do whatever. Like we're going to run occasional events. You don't have to come to them, but like sometimes you can. And that's it. And I think that is just beautiful. And what I like so much about the Teal Fellowship, I was talking with one of the people who helps run it the other day, and what she said that really stuck with me, I felt like it just totally hit me, was that the Teal Fellowship is a gift. I texted her that I feel so indebted to you. Like, I feel like you've done so much to support me without asking anything in return. And she replied, that's the point. It's a gift. You don't owe anything to me, even your sympathy. Like, you don't owe anything. It's a gift. And I think there's something just so beautiful about that. I really want HackClub to be a gift that expects absolutely nothing in return. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Teal Fellowship was great. It was great because I like free money is amazing. And it let me really focus on HackClub. It's great because it created a sense of security where I didn't have to think about like 3 months from now. I could think like, what do I want to be doing in a year from now and 2 years from now, which at the time feel like impossibly long periods of time. Like all networks, there are some bad people and there are some good people, and the good people in the Teal Fellowship are just the best in the entire world. Like, I have made some real friends that I hope to carry for the rest of my life through the fellowship. I think they're just like so many fellows that I am just like so humbled by when I learn about them and when I talk with them. I just think it's like an incredible program. I was very, very, very skeptical of it coming in. I thought it was like an exclusive club that was snotty coming in. And I really felt like it was kind of like the exact opposite. But what I really appreciate so much is in so many ways how intellectually honest it is.
Gotcha. So I know you, up until a few years ago, operated out of Silicon Valley with Hack Club, right? So do you think you'd have been able to start something like Hack Club outside of Silicon Valley?
I have no idea. That's a good question. Definitely not at the time. I don't know about now. And I don't think it's because of Silicon Valley. I think it's because of friends and proximity of friends that share values.
Yeah.
Like living it, what it really was not Silicon Valley, but that actually there. Okay, yeah, I don't think I could have done it without being in Silicon Valley, because there are multiple layers to it. The first layer was a house I lived in, which meant that like every few nights, like we would stay up until like 3 a.m. just talking about stuff. And like that stuff went from like how one of our companies was doing to like someone would show something really cool that they were making, which was really inspiring, to like really like, much deeper like philosophical things. Like I never went to college, but the sorts of conversations I would imagine people have in like college dorm rooms late at night, which was a thing that I'm just so grateful that I was able to get. The second thing is like when you like being in Silicon Valley at that time, everybody's very generous. So I was like, I'm not from wealth. Like my parents are not like executives at like a company. I do not have like connections coming in. Like when I moved here, like the first person I met had a higher net worth than anyone I'd ever met in my life before. Like literally the first meeting I had. So being in an environment where people were super generous, willing to give their time, like really helped build out my network and HackClub's network early on. Actually, the first person I ever met when I came to San Francisco is now on HackClub's board and like is enormously instrumental in HackClub's success so far. And like, I definitely would not call HackClub successful yet. I think there's 1,000 ways we need to be better.
Gotcha. So I know that you mentioned earlier that you moved out of Silicon Valley in San Francisco a few years ago, right? So I'm curious what motivated that decision.
Oh, I moved out in March.
Gotcha.
But I didn't technically move out until August. I still had my lease. I mean, it was just COVID. Like, it doesn't make sense to spend so much money in an area where you can't use the utility of the area. I also just more broadly was really depressed and sad at the end. Like, I just didn't really feel like I'd found, like, I feel like I had totally the right group for that time when I moved there, but I just didn't feel like I was like totally getting the group that I needed. And I think just personally, I was ready for a change. I also felt like so much hostility, which really I didn't like. Like I definitely like the world did not feel malleable. It felt like it felt like my neighbors didn't like me. Not like like literally the person next to me didn't like me. It just felt like there was like a very like "F you techies" attitude that I was really like. It just wasn't fun for me to like, you know. It was just so expensive. I'm in Vermont now, and HackClub has moved our headquarters to Vermont.
Awesome. So one of the final questions I have about HackClub specifically is, what is something that you're super excited about right now in regards to HackClub, right? What is it that is currently motivating you to hop out of bed every day and like grind on HackClub?
Yeah. I mean, I will say that I'm like HackClub's past the grind stage. Like we were at a grind stage, we're past the grind stage. Like for me, the best work that I can do for HackClub is not grind. If I just grind, like HackClub will fail because if I like the quality of my decisions is now a lot more important than the quantity of my decisions or the quantity of the hours I put in. So I still work very hard, but we're past the grind stage. Like a lot more of my time is now focused on making the right decisions for HackClub and being very smart about how we grow and about how we move forward. Because it's so clear HackClub can scale and we know how to scale. The challenge is how do you scale while making the average experience for the average person at HackClub higher quality over time rather than lower quality over time. Everybody starts by building a high quality product and then it becomes lower quality over time, particularly for communities as it grows. That's like the existential thing that HackClub's going to face. But in terms of motivator, I mean, just kind of more broadly, like I think that humanity as a whole is in this like great transition moment right now. And I think that like we are moving from a world where the primary struggle is one of man versus nature to a world where the primary struggles are ones of our own creation. Like already today, we're feeling the effects of climate change. Already today, like we can see immediately on the horizon, like automation, and we're already feeling that today. And like AI risk is like an existential threat that we're gonna have to be thinking about, over the next 25 and 50 years. Like, I think over the next 50 years, humanity is going to face some of the biggest challenges that we've ever had to reckon with. And all of these challenges are underpinned by technology, and they're all underpinned by this broader shift of like the challenges that we're facing are ones of our own creation. Like we're increasingly born to a world that is of our own creation, of our own like morphing, not one that was just made before us. And I think that in previous kind of great periods of transition, humanity's had strong cultural institutions that have helped people, particularly young people, gain not just the skills, but like the mindset and the network and the culture to become the future leaders that like, that generation of humanity needed. I think of like the Girl and Boy Scouts that were created when America was urbanizing. Like, how do we urbanize while keeping the values that has gotten America to where we're at today? And I think that we need a new cultural institution that works for young people today. I think HackClub should be that cultural institution. Like, I want to live in a world where HackClub becomes as ubiquitous and as universal and as culturally foundational for young people today as the Girl and Boy Scouts were 70 years ago. And I think that just like how the Boy Scouts has this, like, when you talk to people who've gone through the program, outdoorsmanship was a big part of it. You go on these camping trips, you learn all of these skills, but really, outdoorsmanship was just a medium through which identities and skills and values were built. And I think with HackClub, when we're successful, and I don't think we're always successful, I think we're only successful in the minority of cases right now. But I think that if we can get to the point where we're successful, I think that it's similar, where coding is just the medium. But really the thing that's happening is values and like instilling thoughtfulness and instilling curiosity, instilling a renewed sense of romanticism around science and progress. Like that's what I want HackClub to be. And I think that this is a thing that's not just needed today. It doesn't, but it's like a thing that like humanity needs for the next 100 years. And I feel very strongly about that. And I think HackClub is could be it if we do a good job.
Awesome. So now I want to talk about what I've seen you write about as your favorite subject, hacking, right? So I'm curious, how do you define what hacking is? And I know you've written about it being a superpower. What is it that makes hacking so powerful in your eyes?
Well, I think what hacking means is hacking is unconventional problem solving. A great hacker is a great unconventional problem solver. It's someone who takes things apart and asks, could it be done differently? And I think that this goes back to the AI lab at MIT in the middle of the last century, where there was a group of hackers who were asking questions about, can we make open source software? Questions about artificial intelligence. Those were some of the original hackers. But I also think it's today too, it's every person who right clicks and clicks inspect element and asks like, how does this actually work? Like what's actually going on here? Whether they're playing Neopets, whether they're playing a new game that's only around today, whether they're browsing the internet for fun, whether they're going through a friend's DeviantArt or ArtStation or fan fiction profile. I also think hacking is looking at bigger systems in the world around us and asking like, God, can we do government better? Can we do kind of these big structural systems that we all live in better? That's what I think hacking is. And I think that we need a new identity in America. Like I hope to live in a world where in every high school, alongside the band kids and the theater kids, I want there to be the hackers. And I want that to be as accepted and as common, as ubiquitous and as deep as the other identities that exist. And I want it to be inclusive too.
Got it. So now I want to talk about some of the biggest learnings that we all have, right? Which is the mistakes and the failures. So can you tell me a little bit about some of the biggest, most embarrassing, funniest mistakes or failures that you've had to date, as well as a little bit of, how'd you get around them? How'd you solve them?
Yeah, in 2017, December 2017, HackClub had $8,000 in his bank account. And that's not that, and we were basically out of money. It was just me and one other person. I had a larger team beforehand, but we couldn't afford to keep everyone. Right in front of us, it was pretty clear that, HackClub could not exist. Like there was a world where HackClub didn't exist in a couple months. And that was the worst. That was the worst. And what it was because I had this idea that if we just spent all of our time building a program that was just amazing, we could just take it to philanthropists and say like, this is obviously amazing, give us money. And that's just not how the world works. And it's not because philanthropists are evil. It's because when you're building a nonprofit, you really have to build two products. You have to build a product for your users, and you have to build a product for the people who are going to fund you, because they have different perspectives. They see the world differently. And it's not because one person is better than the other. You just need to translate. And I had done a bad job translating. And I'd forgotten that as the founder, my job wasn't just to make sure we were working on the right things, wasn't just to make sure the right people on the team, but also was to make sure we had money in the bank. And I neglected that responsibility. And as a result, one of my, HackClub almost died. And that was the worst. And an extremely humbling experience. Really an extremely humbling experience. So
Gotcha.
that's definitely the biggest. I've had a lot of other, there's 1,000 things I've done wrong and 1,000 things that I could be better at every day, really. Like from managing personnel to hiring people to sometimes you have to let people go, and that's tough. To like strategy, to like getting ahead of issues, to like letting politics develop and not being a strong leader, to like there's like 1,000 mistakes. Like really, like I make so many mistakes, and I regularly make so many mistakes. But I think the important thing is like, are you going on the right path? And I feel like, yeah, like I feel like we're getting a little bit better every day. I feel like I'm getting a little bit better every day too.
Awesome. So I want to quickly touch on one of the things you mentioned, which is philanthropy, right? So a lot of folks, especially during COVID, are starting up nonprofits, and what seems to be the general trend is they just can't get cash from anywhere, right? Because you can't go to Sand Hill Road and expect the VC there to fund you. How did you manage to get funding for Hack Club from philanthropists?
Yeah, well, I think that people give money for a few different reasons. I think they give money usually for one of five reasons. One, because they're curious and they want to learn more. Two, because they have a relationship with you and they want to continue and support and foster that relationship. Three, because it's their job. Like at a foundation, the way foundations are very different than individuals. Foundations at the beginning, they decide how much money they're going to give away. And the job is just how do we give away the money that we already set aside the most effectively? Like they're going to spend the money no matter what. Or for an individual, they might not spend that money if they didn't give it to you. So like for the former, that's like their job. So like they give you money because it's their job. Fourth, because I think that this is one of the big ones, which is because it helps perpetuate their identity into the world. I think people give money to things that they see as perpetuating their identity in the world. And then fifth, because it's helpful to them. Like it's like from a career perspective, it's good for them to do that. Sometimes this is because there's like events you get invited to if you donate. So, Hack Club is very different than most nonprofits in the way that we fundraise. We don't raise a lot of money, but we do raise some. This past year, we raised about $1.3 million in philanthropy, which is amazing. And I'm so grateful to every person who's given to that. And again, like our smallest donor is literally $1. Like people who go to hackclub.com/donate and give $5-10 a month, like that really makes a big difference. And our largest was, I think Elon was our largest last year. Or no, we had two people who gave at the $500,000 level last year. So I think that's why people give. I think there's different kinds of donors. And I think that philanthropy is hard, I don't know what advice to give to people who are teenagers starting nonprofits, because I also think there's like two kinds of teenage nonprofits. Like there's the really heartfelt teenage nonprofit. Like someone who is making something truly because they're making what they wish they had when they were what they wish they had. Like they want to make what they want in the world. And I think for these people, like what you should do is you should cold email people and have interesting meetings with people that you look up to and ask to meet again and again. And after you've had 2 or 3 meetings, ask if they'd be willing to support you with a gift. And I think that the reason and the primary part of your pitch should probably be your conviction. Even if you can't explain why you have such high conviction, like the primary thing will be the conviction behind like how much you believe in the thing you're doing. For the second kind of teenage nonprofit, which I'm a little cynical around this part, but like the college application nonprofit, I don't know what to do. I think the college application process is turning a generation of teenagers into psychopaths. And is training a generation of sociopaths. And I don't know what to do. Because on one hand, it's like, I could easily say you should only start an organization if you truly believe in what you're doing. But on the other hand, it's like, well, the college application process literally forces you to do this stuff. And for most people, like you should try to like get into the best college possible. So I don't know what advice to give around that.
Gotcha.
I guess the one thing would be like, do something real. There are so many nonprofits that I've seen who like claim to like do some vague, ambiguous mission. Like pick a specific thing and do a real thing that can be measured in real numbers. For HackClub, like HackClub today is like a nonprofit network of high school hackers. And like we could be a lot better towards doing the best job possible. But HackClub started. HackClub was how many hack clubs are meeting every week? And every week I had a phone call with every single hack club that met. To the point where my Wednesdays started with 8 a.m. in India and ended with 8 p.m. in San Jose, nearly 30 minutes back to back the entire day. Like just do something real. And once you have something real, like, I think you'll probably have a little bit more luck asking people for money. It's not the only thing to do, but you'll be able to speak with much higher conviction than otherwise.
Gotcha. So, what is something that you wish you had known when you first started Hack Club, right? When you first made the move out to Silicon Valley, what is one thing that if you could go back and tell yourself that would like make you grow 10x faster or something similar?
Well, I don't think that the goal for HackClub is growth. I think it's
Hmm.
quality growth. I think we want to provide a really quality experience and give as many people as possible that quality experience. And sometimes the best way to do that is to actually grow the numbers. So that's the first thing I'll say. I'm thinking. I wish I made nonprofit friends faster. I still don't have. I have a lot of friends who are running companies. I have a lot of friends who are kind of like independent makers. I've always had a pretty strong like BS detector, I think. Um, but the thing that it took me forever to find, I still don't think I totally have, is a group of other people who run nonprofits that are more successful than me. And it's not because HackClub's too successful. I just don't think I've met these people. Like I actually think HackClub's like baby. HackClub's like could be so much better. And I really believe this idea that like you are generally the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I really wish I found more nonprofit founders that I actually really genuinely looked up to, not who weren't just like better than HackClub on paper, but like I actually genuinely looked up to and had a great relationship with. I really wish I had that. HackClub's really, I think, gotten a lot better once I've started having little inklings of that.
Gotcha. So my final question for you is one that I always ask every guest at the end of the interview. So what is your favorite number? And because I believe every number has a significance, what is its significance to you?
I don't think I have a favorite number. I wish I could give like a clever math answer of like, oh, like 0 because it's beautiful and most civilizations don't find it. No, I really don't know. I guess what I will say is like, I really believe strongly. And if you want to build something great, start with the individual. Like, how do you provide a life-changing experience to one person? Like, how do you build like not what a lot of people will like, but like what you so desperately wish you had or what you so desperately wish you have today, and really do the best job in the world at that. Like, I believe in depth before breadth. And I guess that would be the number one.
Gotcha. That's really cool, actually. Haven't had anyone say 1 or what you suggested was 0 as well. So, I think that provides a unique outlook. But yeah, I think that question brings us to the answer to that question brings us to a really nice close, right? So yeah, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast.
You bet. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful for the chance to talk with you, and I think what you're doing here is really cool.